Hi folks, and welcome to my review of the Belgian Grand Prix. Well, looking at the weather predictions before the weekend, I'm sure many of us were expecting a wet Grand Prix, but don't think anyone would have predicted the extent to which the rain would have fallen on race day, which unfortunately meant that we could only have two laps behind the safety car on race day, which meant that the results in qualifying more or less, determined the actual result of the Grand Prix on Sunday. Albeit we had one big incident before the start of the race. On race day, which we'll come on to talk about. But your top three of Max Verstappen, George Russell, and Lewis Hamilton, a top three. Well, you may well have predicted Verstappen and Lewis to finish in the top three, but I don't think many of people would have expected or would have predicted George Russell to be in the top three. But we'll come on to talk about George in a moment. But yeah, just wanted to begin this review by saying a massive um, shout out to all the fans that went to Spa the weekend. The fact that they kept at it. Even on race day, the fact that they stayed in the stands and hoped for action, which unfortunately they didn't see much of on race day. They're the real heroes. Um, they're the ones who stuck it out there, and yeah, real shame that they didn't get to see any racing on Sunday, and I hope they do get full refund, as Lewis rightly said. I think they're perfectly entitled to have that, and I think they should be offered that, or potentially even given the opportunity to go back to Spa next year in 2022. So fingers crossed, fans that yeah, they are given that opportunity to do that next year. But yeah, we really felt for them, especially after what happened on race day with the rain. But also, I want to give a shout out also to the FIA, Michael Massey as well. I can't imagine how difficult it would have been to have made those decisions at the time, particularly on race day. Well, obviously, you got to listen to what the teams, what the drivers are saying, but also obviously trying to um, please the fans as well. But at the end of the day, safety comes first. And whilst there may well have been the grip on the track, which I think the drivers were saying the grip was there, but the visibility wasn't. And had they gone racing in those conditions, then the consequences may well have been pretty serious. So, look, now I think from a safety point of view, the right decision was made to not have a race, which obviously, from a fan perspective, obviously, it's heartbreaking. But as I say, the decision not to race on Sunday was the right one, and when you got visibility as low as it was, as I say, the consequences could have been really serious had the race gone ahead, and we may well have seen some serious um, incidents. And you only have to look back at the really unfortunate and sad events of Suzuka when Jules Bianchi had that incident, which sadly resulted in his fatality and his passing away. So I think, as I say, the right decision was made on race day, and yeah, safety comes first. But we're going to talk about the results. We'll talk about Max Verstappen. You know, Great way to start his two Grand Prix by winning in Belgium, and a fantastic lap in qualifying. So yeah, really good start to the second half of the season for Max Verstappen, and I've got no doubts that he'll be fired up to want to win in front of his home crowd in Holland, which next Grand Prix is not too far away. So yeah, and fingers crossed the weather is a lot better in Holland than it was at Spa this coming week. But yeah, as I say, great win. Well, no, really good. Obviously, look, obviously it was a win for Max Verstappen. Not the way that he would like to have won the race, but no, I'm sure he will take that, and he's closed the gap between himself and Lewis in the Drivers' Championship. So yeah, Max Verstappen won the Belgian Grand Prix, and he will no doubt be more motivated than ever to want to win in front of his home crowd, in front of the Dutch, this in the next race, and as well as Max being one of the stars of the weekend. Another star is was George Russell. Phenomenal lap in qualifying, and we know that particularly this year, he's been known as Mr. Saturday. But honestly, I don't think anyone would have expected George to put the car on 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 front row. For a while, he was on pole, but then obviously Max went that little bit quicker in Q3 on Saturday, which meant that George ended up finishing second. But what a fantastic lap from George Russell! He's definitely, particularly this season, I think he's come on leaps and bounds, and the team as a whole, Williams, they've made significant improvements, and yeah, really fantastic lap from George in qualifying on Saturday. And now you look at the performances that he's put in this year. I would be very surprised if he's not in a Mercedes next year. Um, I think Mercedes definitely will have taken notice of what George was able to do this weekend, and if he's capable of doing that in a Williams, then it just makes you think, what can he do in a Mercedes? And the way I look at it is that it's being Lewis Hamilton or well as Max Verstappen's teammate is hard enough as it is, and Valtteri Bottas, I think he's done a great job. He's definitely been a great team player for Mercedes these last two ever since the hybrid era. Valtteri has done that team player job, and he's been that reliable number two. Um, but if Mercedes are looking to the future, the long term future anyway, then taking on George for me is a no brainer. And when you look at the progress that Russell has made this year, it's been significant progress that him, Williams have made. So, and we saw last season, albeit it was only one race, but we saw what George was capable of in a Mercedes. So he's proven that he can cut it at Mercedes. And look, if Mercedes did decide to go with George, you would have to give him time to settle in. Yes, he's one of their development drivers and he's part of the Mercedes program. But even so, going into a new team, um, having been at Williams for this has been his this is his third season at Williams, but even so, it would take time for George to settle in at Mercedes. So he'd have to be given time. But like I say, I think I'd be very surprised if George is not in a Mercedes drive in a in a Mercedes car in 2022. But then that then leads to where would Valtteri end up? There's been talk about him being linked with a move to Alpha, possibly going back to Williams. For me, if Mercedes did decide to go with George alongside Lewis next year, I think Valtteri's best option would probably actually to go back to Williams. And in a way, it might actually suit him being that team leader and guiding the team, being the one. As I say, that he's the one that's leading the team. So actually, Bottas going to Williams might not be a bad thing. And when you look at the progress that Williams have made this year, when you look at the new regulations that are coming into place for 2022, perhaps being at Williams might not be a bad place for Valtteri to be at. So as I say, I think George, I'd be very surprised if he's not in a Mercedes next year. But I actually just wanted to do a quick shout out to Nicholas Latifi as well. Another great job in qualifying from Nicholas, and yes, he did was able to benefit from Checo having his well coming his instinct, which we'll come on to talk about. But yeah, Nicholas has definitely he's had a good season. Even before he scored points in Hungary, I felt as if he was performing well without without getting the um, without getting the points. But now he scored points at Hungary, scoring points at Spa as well. So Nicholas has he's definitely he's definitely made improvements this year. I think it's good and it's good to see. And don't be surprised if Nicholas does sign a new deal to stay with the team for at least next year. So yeah, good on Nicholas, and good to see him. Good to see Williams doing well as well. So yeah, all round, not a bad weekend at all for Williams. And I was going to mention about Red Bull. Just coming back on to obviously we've just spoken about Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez. Yeah, difficult weekend for the Mexican. Not the weekend he would have wanted on, the way he would have wanted to his second half of the season to get underway. Qualifying, perhaps didn't qualify as high as he would have liked. And obviously we saw on Sunday, didn't have that before making their way to the grid. Obviously, then he had that incident, which meant that he went into the barriers. But it's an easy mistake to make. We saw Max do something similar. I think it was last year in Hungary. So it's it happens to the best drivers. So yeah, really unfortunate for Checo that that did happen. But you got to give massive credit to his colleagues, his team for actually being able to repair the car and actually being able to get it ready for the start of the race as well. Albeit, yes, we didn't get to full racing, but even so, no, the fact that Red Bull were able to make those repairs that would normally take around 3 to 4 hours, but the fact that they're able to do it within an hour, I think is really impressive. So well done to the Red Bull team on that. And look, difficult weekend for Checo, but I'm sure he'll bounce back. And obviously, a good place to bounce back will be at Zandvoort. And yeah, definitely, the fact that it's coming quickly as well suggests that he can take what happened to Belgium out of his head, and then yeah, just really focus on Holland now. And obviously, we know that Checo's on a new deal with the team as well. So yeah, Checo is he's in a good place right now. He just needs to deliver and just needs to get back to being right up there where he can be. To support Max and Red Bull in their challenge for the constructors at least anyway. This year. No, just briefly touched on Mercedes about Valtteri Bottas. Lewis, look, obviously he will have had he's had his lead cut in the drivers' championship, but he's still leading, and I'm sure he will take that. And in a way, going to Zandvoort, in a way he kind of will be going to Verstappen's den, but in a way that should motivate him to want to try and keep the Dutch crowd quiet. Whether he succeeds in that, I'm not sure. But yeah, no, not the most straightforward of weekends for anybody. And definitely not for Mercedes and Lewis. But even so, still more points for them in the drivers and also the constructors championships as well. So leaving Belgium. It was a good Saturday for Daniel Ricciardo. So it was it's a performance that he needed, and no, good on Daniel. Good to see him putting a strong qualifying performance for McLaren on Saturday, which meant that he was able to qualify fourth. But obviously on qualifying as well, we also saw scary crash for Lando Norris as well. Thankfully, Lando was okay. But it just goes to show you how dangerous it can be driving in treacherous and dangerous conditions, and it was pretty gloomy out there. So I could totally understand why Sebastian Vettel was saying no, that session should have been red flagged. Um, so yeah, and it was good from Sebastian actually as well, just making sure that Lando was okay when he stopped at Eau Rouge, just about to go onto the chemistry. But yeah, no, it's good to see, and I think in a way as well that just shows how much of a class act Sebastian is, and he really cares about everyone. In a way, he's kind of you look at from looking from the outside, he's kind of a mentor to Mick Schumacher. And then you see what he did on qualifying day, just making sure Lando um, was okay. Just goes to show that he cares. Really cares about the sport. Really cares about everyone as well. And he's a fantastic human being. So yeah, good on Sebastian Vettel for what he did. And yeah, also talking of Sebastian Vettel, good points for Aston Martin as well. So him finishing fifth in the race, and yeah, more good points for Aston Martin as well. And then obviously, and then just to round it off, so Pierre Gasly, once again, another strong performance from the Frenchman. And once again, he is driving the wheels of the Alpha Tauri. So yeah, he's like Lando has been one of the standard drivers for me of this year so far, and his qualifying is quite remarkable to think. Nah, no, you look at the many times that he's been able to qualify in the top six this year. Quite remarkable, really. So I think Pierre deserves a pat on the back for his role, for the way he's driving this year. And we saw both Ferraris, Leclerc and Carlos Sainz were finishing in the points as well. So not a bad weekend for Ferrari, although normally, I mean, I was expecting them to be a bit stronger, particularly in qualifying. You look at how good they were at Imola, in the wet conditions, and I expected a bit more from Ferrari, but I'm sure they'll take the points from Belgium, and then they'll be hoping for a stronger um, weekend in Holland. So that's more or less the end of my review of the Belgian Grand Prix. Not really much to talk about what happened on race day, but once again, just wanted a massive shout out to the fans that really stuck it out there in Belgium, and also for the FIA and Michael Massey as well. So just for making sure that everyone was safe, and taking those decisions when they did, because I can imagine it was a long day, not just for them but for the fans, obviously for the teams, the drivers as well. But yeah, massive credit to everyone, the way they conducted themselves throughout the whole day, and yeah, hopefully we get to see a much drier weekend at Holland for the next Grand Prix. So catch up with you guys and girls later when I do my preview for the Dutch Grand Prix. And yeah, hopefully, like I say, fingers crossed we're in for a dry race. Take care, everyone.